What is up, Jet Nation? Chris Gardella coming at you with a recap of the glorious news we received this past week from Jets owner Christopher Johnson that Mike Maccagnan was being relieved of his duties as general manager of the Jets after overseeing the last 5 draft and free agency classes for the organization. As we've all seen, read, and heard across the national and local media, this news was not met in kind by our beat writers, and they are now painting the picture that the Jets are an organization in chaos and moving forward the narrative that Christopher Johnson is completely inept and just doesn't have a clue as to what he's doing as the Jets owner. I think this is a false narrative for a million different reasons. Number one, Mike Maccagnan, his firing has been long overdue as far as I'm concerned. When you look at the 5 draft classes and free agency classes that he was able to put together, one thing you see on the free agency front is just the wild and irresponsible overspending on players who were either at the back end of their career or very close to the back end of their career. And specifically looking at that year one run where, the signings of Antonio Cromartie, Darrelle Revis, Marcus Gilchrist, and then the trading for Brandon Marshall, the signing of Eric Decker. All of those things equated to a sugar high for the Jets, where they were able to squeeze 10 wins out against a really weak schedule, and then it just completely crumbled and fell apart in year 2. The more recent signings to be concerned about, obviously the Tremaine Johnson signing is one that stands out. But then you look at the wild overspending for guys like CJ Mosley, who, again, good players, but not sure that you're going to be giving guarantees north of $50 million for, guys who play inside linebacker in a 3-4. Just, again, good player at a non-premium position, not the best use of your free agency dollars, particularly when you've had the same holes across the team for the past 5 years that you've just failed to address. Most notably the offensive line, where I believe the most premium pick that was used in order to add talent there was Brandon Shell, and I think that was a 5th rounder that they invested there. Outside of that, they did just invest a 3rd rounder this year in an offensive lineman, but that is a little bit too late as far as I'm concerned. And then, again, the free agency dollars, the poor draft class, all good reasons to fire Maccagnan. But I think the ultimate decision was made after watching Maccagnan's interaction with the various departments across the Jets organization, more specifically speaking to the coaching staff as well as the scouting department. The scouting department, by reports that have been issued this week, did not like Maccagnan, didn't particularly respect him. And from my understanding, Maccagnan really wasn't taking their input to help drive his decision-making process on draft day, which is certainly a big no-no. At that point, Maccagnan is nothing more than a glorified scout who's just going rogue and doing whatever he wants. And it's a fair question to ask if that's the case, is why do you even have a scouting department if they're just going to be compiling reports that you're not going to be reading and leveraging in order to help improve your decision-making process? The other area is the coaching staff. Obviously, there was some tension between Adam Gase and Mike Maccagnan. My opinion on this is that it's the GM's responsibility, particularly if you're hiring the head coach, to have a really good understanding of the types of schemes that the head coach is going to be looking to deploy on game day, and trying to understand the type of personnel who would fit well within that scheme. This is a pretty simple understanding of the GM head coach relationship. And if Mike Maccagnan was unwilling to provide Adam Gase with the types of players who need to possess the characteristics in order to be successful in the scheme, then that's on Maccagnan, not on Adam Gase. Adam Gase is a football coach. He's more or less set in his ways, has a vision for what he wants to do on game day. It's the GM's job to equip that head coach with the personnel he needs in order to execute on that plan so that the entire organization can be successful going forward. If Maccagnan wasn't doing that, then that's on him as far as I'm concerned. And it's well within Christopher Johnson's right to move on from him sooner rather than later in order for the franchise to move forward with one cohesive vision. Again, the timing was messy. You wish this would have happened back in January along with Todd Bowles. The fact of the matter, it didn't. It's better late than never. this isn't without precedent. Something similar happened to John Dorsey in Kansas City. And I'm sure Christopher Johnson was aware of that and used that to help justify his decision happening in May rather than happening at a later date. With all that being said, I think the arrow is pointing up for the Jets. The free agents that Maccagnan brought in, probably wouldn't be all that different than if another GM was in the position for the Jets back in February. He basically went big game hunting with the usual suspects: C.J. Mosley, Le'Veon Bell, Jamison Crowder, etc. Would the roster look a little bit differently today if a new GM had been in place a couple of months ago? Absolutely, but I don't think a new GM is going to come in here and be, completely handcuffed in what he wants to do moving forward. There's enough there's enough talent on this roster that you'll be able to win between 7 and 10 games next year. I think that's a realistic expectation. Maybe 10 is on the high end of the scale, but not out of range for sure. But again, I'm on board with the decision. I think Christopher Johnson did the right thing, wrong timing, but I'm happy with it moving forward. And I think it's important for the Jets to find someone now that can play nice with Adam Gase, understand the vision that he's looking to have on game day, and then help aid him in building a roster that can execute on that scheme. I think the GM should continue to have final say on the personnel matters, but again, you need to be working hand in hand with the head coach in order to build a cohesive unit and the scouting department as well. So don't panic, Jets fans. Don't listen to the local media, the national media. We're in good shape. At this point, all of the wrongs of the past can be righted, assuming that you make the right decision and bring in a head coach, a new GM who can work well with Adam Gase. Thanks, guys.